some of y'all on the East Coast. So we'll go ahead and start it up here. So again, my name's j.slagle. I've been with TRBOnet about 8 years now. Great company, love being part of it. It's fun working for the company that makes the best software on the market in our expertise. So today I'm going to be going over what's new with our TRBOnet version 6.0 for TRBOnet Enterprise and TRBOnet Plus. Got a lot of cool new features, and I'll be going over some of them. Won't apply as much to North America, which is our region, but I'll still cover them because there is some usage in North America region. So a little bit about us on the 30,000 foot view. We still have everything we've always had. We have the TRBOnet Enterprise Plus, TRBOnet Watch. It's a systems monitoring software. Tech people absolutely love this software because you can get a lot of information from running the watch, and it can alert you if something happens to your system, if you lose touch with a repeater or a repeater goes down. And then we have TRBOnet Voice Recorder, which records all calls. All your calls are recorded, timed, and date stamped. And that's one thing great about TRBOnet. All our software, everything that happens on our software is recorded, timed, and date stamped. So we don't delete anything. So anything, GPS points, text messages, you can go back and get. It's recorded and saved. We have option board, generic option board programming that's really cool. Our developers are amazing. We can detect if a automobile has been in a crash, or if somebody was to drop a portable radio and not pick it back up. That would also make crash detect go off. We have that with the ability just to program the generic option board. You don't need any other equipment, no boxes or anything. We have store and forward that we can do with the generic option board programming. So if you need more updates than you're able to get from your repeater system with store and forward on the generic option board, you can get up to 2-second updates. It's all configurable and programmable, so you can get every 5 seconds, or you can even, our software is so smart, you can say, if I'm going along a straightaway, I don't need as many breadcrumbs dropped, but as I'm going around a curb, I want to drop more breadcrumbs. So it can show you exactly the path you went. And the store and forward is a great feature, and it works even if you go out of radio range. We have some hardware pieces that make our software easier to bring in some outside radios and things. We have a IP gateway device called the TRBOnet Swift Agent. This thing's, I call it the magic box, because you can bring in any outside radio onto your TRBOnet console. It can be a P25, it can be a different brand, it can be an analog, digital, anything, any radio, or of course also a Moto Turbo radio. You can bring that bring it onto your console, and then you could cross patch with radio groups that you already have, or a radio channel, or works great for emergencies. If you were to have like a college campus and they wanted to be able to speak with the sheriff's department or something during a situation like an emergency, an active shooter, or even during graduation when they have the sheriff's department helping direct traffic, you could cross patch the sheriff's department with the security at the school. So a lot of cool things can happen with that. We got microphone adapters, foot switches, but most of our stuff's software, and you can get it all from us. We also have the TRBOnet mobile client. I'm going to be hitting on that a lot today. It's how to turn your cell phone, your smartphone, into a soft radio. We'll be going into real detail on that because there's a lot of new features, really, really cool. So with that, here's our release dates of the latest versions of software. We just, like I said, this was just last Friday. We introduced TRBOnet Enterprise 6.0, TRBOnet Plus 6.0, TRBOnet Mobile Client as well was just updated, and then Watch was updated June of last year, and Swift firmware, we had some really good updates on that in March of 2022. So, all right, so let's talk about TRBOnet Plus and TRBOnet Enterprise. They're same software, just you need them for different reasons, but they're basically for all practical purposes and for demo reasons, they're the same software. So some of the new features, we have a connection manager I'll be going over a little bit. We can now support full duplex with certain systems and on certain devices, which I'll go over. I'll briefly hit a little bit about Dimitra Express and Tetra support. Not as big in North America as Europe, but I'll still hit on it a little bit, and then of course some functionality updates. So supported systems, you of course can IP to any Moto Turbo system, Cap Max, Connect Plus, single repeaters, any of them you can IP directly to the master repeater or single repeater. No control stations needed and no external equipment. Makes it nice and neat. And because of this, you can have your, I got a lot of calls when the COVID thing happened, and people were saying, "Oh my gosh, these people want to dispatch out of radio range. How can we make that happen?" I said, "Well, you always could. When everything's done over the IP, you can have your TRBOnet dispatcher in Kansas and the TRBOnet server in Florida, and then the repeater system in Canada, because it all goes over the IP. So you don't have to have everything within that little radio range of the repeater system, and makes it very handy with everything being able to IP, no control stations needed. You don't have an octopus at your server with all the cables going out in the control station radios. So we can now IP into the Jotron. I think it's pronounced with a Y, Jotron, but that's some of this is Tetra and Dimitra I'm not as familiar with. It's the same with the MTM 5400. You can go in with a control station radio, but there's some cool things you can get from it, even though it's not Moto Turbo. You can IP directly to a Dimitra Express, and of course, as I mentioned before, any non-Moto Turbo radio or Moto Turbo radio, you can use the TRBOnet Swift agent and bring that onto your console as well. So all these can go to your TRBOnet console, and you could cross patch them and everything. So the connection manager, this is new and it's really cool. It's never been so easy to create dispatch positions and everything. A lot of times dispatchers are all going to have pretty much the same. Everything's done by permissions with TRBOnet, either by the radio or by the dispatcher. So when you set up a dispatch position, there's certain things you're going to want the dispatcher to be allowed to do, and certain things you might not want them to do. So what's great is with the connection manager now, you can pretty much basically just, if you create a standard dispatch position, you can just copy that and do it again for the next person, and then make any kind of small adjustments as you want. You can have the TRBOnet One console that I'll cover in a minute, our newest console, our newest GUI, and also the old legacy one that everybody's used to. You can have both those loaded and use the connection manager to do that. And so here's what I was talking about. You can, with the connection manager, you could copy a profile, import, export connection profiles. You can configure your redundant servers on here, which just makes it a lot easier. And then you can have your custom folder for configure files in a separate location. So if something major happens, you have a crash, you have your configure files, and you can load those back up and be up and running again real soon. And then you can also have the default console positions. So just makes it a lot easier for everybody. We now support full duplex calls. Now, for North America, because we mostly deal with Moto Turbo, we don't have that ability, but with the Demetra and the Tetra, they have the full duplex where you can talk and listen at the same time. But it does help us out with our Turbonet mobile client, our smartphone turned into a radio. Those now, if you're talking to the console, if you're talking to the dispatch position, or if you're talking Turbonet mobile client to Turbonet mobile client, you have full duplex now. You don't have to push the button and talk and then wait and listen. You'll still have to do that when you talk to the Moto Turbo radios, but that's a limitation of Moto Turbo. But the Demetra Express, new features, full duplex, the dynamic grouping, DGNA, the group affiliation, present detection, check for presence, radio stun. These things were not available before, so it's nice that we can now do these if you use the Demetra radio systems. And with Tetra, you have to use control stations, but you get a lot of information that we couldn't get before. So this is great. You get the radio IDs, group calls, GPS updates. You can text message back and forth, and you can do private calls as well. So that's new. So here's a big one. I love this one. This is our alarm escalation. So before 6.0, basically when an alarm went out, it just went out. And we have event alarm management, so you could configure it to go to different people, and you could configure a lot of things to happen. But at the end of the day, there was no way to know if somebody answered that alarm. It went out, and hopefully somebody heard it, but no acknowledgments, no way to escalate if nobody answered. But now we can escalate. And so when something happens, you can say, okay, if this event or this alarm goes off, I want it to go to the security group, the security channel. And then if nobody answers in 1 minute or 2 minutes, whatever you configure, I want it to escalate and send another message to this group, and an email to this group, and a text message to this group. And you can build these escalations, unlimited number of escalations. So this is huge. So now you know exactly when an alarm happened, when it was acknowledged, when it was, put to bed or whatever, when it was taken care of, or whatever action was taken. And again, everything's recorded, timed, and date stamped. So you have it all right there when you want to pull it back up and look at it at a later date. You can select the response to any alarm in the input of the alarm management. And for those of you that don't know, event alarm management to me is like my favorite module to add to software. It should be on every license. It's the most diverse module we have. You can make any event or any alarm create any other event or any other alarm. So it can be as important if a fire alarm goes off. You can have it call 911 and play a pre-recorded call. But it can also just be, we have an email gateway built into our software. So you can say, if somebody emails this email address, I want a text message to go to, my sister. Whatever you want to happen, it can be something really important or just something mundane like that. So it's any alarm or any event can create any other thing. So you can make emails, text message, voice calls. You can pre-record and do text-to-speech voice announcements. We can do acknowledgement codes through text message or DTMF for the voice calls. We can do predefined or generated codes for acknowledgement, and we have of course, like I mentioned, the configurable wait time. It's all up to you and the end user. Whatever they decide they want, that's what they get. And then also with that, like I said, you have unlimited numbers of escalations. So when you have an escalation, you get a box that pops up and you can see, okay, this has 1 out of 12. So you're on the first step of escalation. So if somebody were to answer this, then it wouldn't be escalated. It would be answered on 1, acknowledged, everything goes away. But if it doesn't, then it'll go to 2 of 12, and then 3 of 12, and that's all logged. And then you have a detailed log of when everything happened and who the message went to at what time, and everything's recorded, timed, and date stamped. So really nice. Also, a lot of requests for this. We now can save your recordings on OGG files. They take up a lot less space than WAV files. WAV's kind of the favorite right now. We have WAV and TNA. TNA's a TRBOnet protocol, and WAV, of course, everybody knows. So most people do WAV, but they take up a lot of room on your hardware, on your server. So OGG, you can play it back on most computers just like you can WAV, and it also takes up a lot less room. So we offer that now. Really cool. Another thing with the generic option board programming we can now save RSSI data for the store and forward. That's really, really cool. Before we couldn't do that. And so now you can go and put it on a map and see exactly where your strong points are and weak points from the store and forward. So you can get a lot more GPS points with that, of course, than you could on regular polling. We had some requests for show radios only in emergency. We have some unions that by union rule, they're not allowed to be tracked. But anybody's allowed to be tracked during an emergency. That's something that's universal. So we have it now where you can only see the radios during an emergency. There was a way to filter it before, so that's all you could see, but it was a filter. Somebody could actually turn it off and see where they were. So it was a filter you could do, but it could be overridden. So now you can have it where it just shows the radios where their location is during an emergency. We support multi-speak 5.0. So this is for anybody out there with electric companies. We have a ton of electric companies, and they love multi-speak because a lot of them, or most of them even, I'd say, use MillSoft. And it's a GIS software that shows their grid, and they want to import where their trucks are on their mapping grid. And if you sell an electric company, multi-speak is the easiest add-on you'll have, because all you have to do is say they're multi-speak compatible. You can actually go to the website and look TurboNet up. We're the only ones on the multi-speak website that do dispatch software. Nobody else is listed of companies you know, only TurboNet. We're actually partnered with them. So it's a great relationship, and electric companies are the biggest users of it, and they love it. We also made some improvements with Modbus or Modbus. If you are familiar with Modbus, you'll understand this better than me, but TurboNet can read the value of a specific bit now, and we support for byte swapping. So if you're working with Modbus, you would know what that means better than I would, but it's an improvement. So now I love TurboNet 1. This is our newest console. It's been out for a while, but it's been very limited to what you could do. It even looks cooler, and people like the way it looks, but it didn't have as many of the features as our old legacy look had. So now we've got it going on, and it's so configurable. You literally, it says build your own console. That's what you can do. You can configure it all kinds of crazy ways you want. You have your radios over here on the side, your mapping. We have a PDF reader that you can have on the console. And if you don't want a PDF reader, you don't have to have that. You just don't put it there. You put whatever you want, wherever you want. You have your call log here in this pop-up window. You can have that or not. You can hide it and just have it if you want to pull it up when you want to see it. You have your radio groups on here. You can PTT, and you can, of course, connect that up to a foot pedal or use your keyboard or headset, anything you want. So very, 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 very sleek, very cool look, and it's definitely a big announcement, you know. So has a new flat design, meaning it's more like looking at the color. The colors are brighter and separate things a little. A very nice look. We have themes now. We have a dark and light themes. People at night don't like looking at, you know, the bright computer lights sometimes, so we have a dark mode. You'll see a slide in a second that shows the dark mode, but it also shows the mapping, and the mapping we can't control, but so I'll explain that more in a second. But on the screens that there's no mapping, you can make it in dark mode, and that's not dark mode, but when you see it, you'll see it's very cool. We also have configurable sound notifications. I love this. It's just like when your phone that you have in your pocket, you know when you get a text message and you know when you get an email. They have different sounds. Everybody configures their phones to have different sounds, so you kind of know what's up. You know if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you get a text message or you get a Snapchat message, you know the difference before you pick up your phone. So that's basically the same idea here. You have the configurable sound, so you can have a certain tone for a text message coming in or a PTT. It's all configuring now. You can do access voice recordings with new filters, so that's big. And like I said, everything that happens on our software recorded, timed, and date stamped. So you can go back and you can listen to a recording that somebody just called in. You didn't hear what they said. You can go back and play the recording. And then we have splitters you can put on the screens too. So it's also interchangeable with the classic console. So for the few functionalities that aren't in TRBOnet 1 that you have to use the old legacy console, you can just pop it up real quick and sign in, no problem. It's really easy to do. And it's included in all TRBOnet Enterprise and TRBOnet Plus packages, so it's not extra or anything. It's there. With the console, again, this is one of the configurations you can have. This one kind of leans towards a strong dispatcher that does phone work. You have your telephone interconnect here. So if you have a SIP 2.0 compatible PBX phone system, you can bring that onto your console. You can make phone calls, you can answer phone calls, you can transfer a phone call to a radio or a group of radios, and a couple more things I'll show you in a second. But you can have a phone book here where you can just push a button, it'll dial the number. You have all your different lines you can answer and put people on hold, everything. And then you have all your other screens that you need to get to. You have here's an emergency that happened, you know, and I'll get into that more in a second. And then here's your PDF reader that I'll also get into a little more in detail here. So this is the alarm notification. So now we can filter the alarms by groups or the type of notification, not just alarms. I'm sorry. You can filter any notification by groups or the type of notification, and you can assign a value to them. So emergencies, of course, are going to be the highest value, and also you have your actions of what to do. You know, do you want to cancel that emergency? Is everything fine now? Do you want to send it to someone else? All these things you can do are right there at your fingertips, and then you get detailed information of the person that is sending you the request to talk or that's having the emergency or whatever. You get their location, you get them, and on top of that, you can have it where a map will pop up and it'll show where they're at on a map. That's one of the features of our software that I love. As soon as an emergency happens, your map pops up and shows on the map exactly where they're located. So we also have really outdone ourselves with these quick commands. Quick commands are always cool. You push a button and you can send a message. You can, you've always been able to do that. You've also been able to schedule messages. Like you can schedule a message to go out every day at 4 o'clock. You can, it can be a voice message. It can be a text message. If the radios are, 7500 or whatever that have the screen. Or you can just push a button. If something happens, if you have an event that happens regularly but not on a schedule, you can have it ready to go, and then when it happens, boom, you just push the button and it'll go to whoever you want it to go to. You have it, you can say, I want it to go to this group, that group, all groups, and you can change that on a dime too. It's really easy. So we have a large selection of possible commands too. You can do a text message, telemetry. You can request the location of the radio. You can send a voice message. You can send signaling, send command to a control station radio. You can request to talk. You can even customize an event, whatever you want to do. You can actually get in there and customize it. You can send a swift command or send push notifications. So, and it's just really easy to set this up, and it's just, you really will love the quick commands. The PDF viewer, this is so cool because you're able to, like, you could actually pull up your user manual or whatever right there on a PDF as you're using your TRBOnet One. So you could be, how do I do this? How do I create, how do I do an all call or whatever? You can just sit there and read about it and then do it. And you can even like print something out. You can see, oh, I need to print that out and hand it out to everybody. So you have PDFs open inside your console, any kind of manuals, any PDFs. It doesn't even have to be about TRBOnet. You have your Zoom page view scrolling just like you would in any other PDF viewer. And like I said, you can print files directly from the console. So you see something you want to print, boom, do it, send it to the printer. And you can have more than one PDF document open in the same workspace. So you can have multiple PDFs open if you're, tabbing back and forth to see different things. So very, very nice. With the call center, we have the quick dial buttons. So you can make a direct phone call to a specific contact. That's the one touch, boom. You have pre-programmed numbers. You have unlimited number of phone lines. So when people say, how many, I'm going to have 10 phone lines, how many phone interconnects do I need on my license? You just need one. Unlimited phone lines, doesn't matter. We have the quick dial, any phone number, and this is really cool. You can conference call with phones, radios, and radio groups. You can conference people together, and it's real simple to do. It's basically, it's a drag and drop. Boom, add to conference, and it'll just, you can conference whoever you want. And so, and also you have the ability, like it says, to hold or mute attendees. So if you want to have basically like a meeting and you want to be the only one talking, you can mute everybody else or mute whoever you want. So very, very good feature for that. Here's the night view of the TRBOnet One. Like I said, the map, we don't control that. The map this is an OpenStreetMap. You can have any mapping you want. And in fact, I think if you took Google Map with an actual landscape, the actual like satellite view, it might be a little darker. This is OpenStreetMaps, and it's a little bright, but you can see everything else is very nice and in the night view. So it's really pleasant to look at. And you probably wouldn't be on the mapping screen the whole time anyway, but it's a nice view, nice adaptation. And here's where we got a whole bunch of cool new features. Our TRBOnet mobile client, PTT. You can have, quite frankly, you can have the PTT and you don't even need a radio system. You can have just smartphones, and you're not even going to be limited to the coverage area because it works off LTE and 4G, 5G. So it's pretty cool. But you can also, of course, tie it into your radio system, which a lot of people love to do. We have the connection manager and connection profiles in this. This makes it a lot easier. You have profiles that include the IP address of the server, the SIP ID, and passwords. So you can actually now make phone calls from the TRBOnet mobile client. You're not having to go to your phone to make a phone call. And the advantage of this is any phone calls that are made from this application are going to be recorded, timed, and date stamped. They'll have the caller ID, who the phone call went to, everything that was said. So you can instruct people to say, okay, we have to make phone calls through this app, and they will, and then everything's recorded, timed, and date stamped. You can have multiple profiles for a quick profile change. So if people share a phone, for instance, that would be a great time to say, okay, this I'm going to give the radio phone to XYZ. Boom, you scan their QR code, and when they push their push to talk, it comes up to the dispatch console as Bob. It's not going to be like radio 4, like a lot of people that share radios do. It's just like we have the same thing with radios, actually, called the radio allocation. We can do that with radios. Well, you can do it with the TRBOnet mobile client now too. So, and the QR code just makes it so easy. It's just really, we're like way high tech. It's super cool. Okay, we also can do redundant servers now. So this is great if you are on a system and you lose the server goes down, your main server, it can switch to a different server. You have it all configured and everything, and you have a backup server or 2 backup servers or whatever. It can automatically switch to the server that's online when one goes offline. So you're never going to lose touch with your dispatch positions. And you can change the server priority. So just get full duplex calls now. That's really neat, because the whole PTT, when you were on a phone, it always seemed a little weird. So now you just talk just like you would on a phone call. So, and all these calls are recorded, timed, date stamped, boom. You can do private calls to and from the dispatcher and Tetra radios with full duplex. You can mute microphone and speakerphone, and calls can be handled when the app's in the background. So you don't have to have it like up on the front. It can be in the background and you'll still get a phone call if it comes in, or a radio call. This is really cool too. You now can get a call history of all your recent calls and everything, and it actually will log them. They're recorded for you on the phone. They're recorded on the TRBOnet server too, but they're recorded on your phone for a little while. That's configurable, and it has to be allowed by security standards and everything of the end user. But you can record your calls so people can go back and listen to what somebody told them while they were talking to them or whatever. Very, very cool feature. And we have the storage configuration for logging, so it just wraps it all up in a nice bow there. We have pop-up controls and quick actions, so it's very easy for you to say, oh, okay, I'm going to send a text message, I'm going to send an email, like a phone call, boom, boom, boom. You push to talk, full duplex calls, messaging, request to talk, and your favorites, long press to contact will open up a PTT window. So if you have somebody you want to talk to, you can just hold down your thumb or your finger, and it'll bring them up, and you can PTT them. Just really user friendly there. And there's a do not disturb mode. And so if you want to be left alone, you can put on your do not disturb, and the status of your do not disturb is visible to the dispatcher, so they'll know what's going on. And they'll also know if somebody calls and says, hey, I can't get in touch with Bob, you know, they'll say, well, he's got do not disturb now on, he's in some meetings. So you can also, this was something that a lot of people wanted, and I kind of got why, because before you had to push the PTT on the actual phone, but now you can assign it to a button. That's really neat. I like that. So you can just push it on my right button on the side is going to be my PTT button. So it even feels more like a radio. You can have emergency, you know, your emergency alert can also be a button. So all that can be assigned with the key codes. But the application must be running in the foreground for that to be unlocked, just so you know, but that's not a big deal. You're not going to be wanting to talk on the radio if you don't know who you're talking to anyway, so they're going to be on the foreground. We support landscape and portrait mode now too. So when you open your login screen of the app, simply turn your device and select what orientation you want. The app will lock in to that orientation after you log in, and you have to, of course, have auto rotate enabled, but you can now have your landscape view where before you couldn't. That's really neat. A lot of people like having their radio, their phone, like sideways on when they have it on a desk or on the dash or something. So that's really a nice adaptation to that. Also now, if you have multiple people logging in, sometimes administrators especially will share passwords and logins, or they'll just have different administrators, but they just come in as administrators. So now you can see how many, like when you look online, you can see, okay, there's 2 online under logged in as administrator. So you would know that by looking at it. This is really big to people that have used this app a lot. They say, oh, that's really cool, because before they never did know. So it'll show how many have logged in, and it shows how many are offline too. So you know how many dispatchers they have, and you know how many are offline, and it has the message history. So that's a good feature. Oh God, I forgot to say something, guys. I'm so sorry. Anybody has any questions, write them down, just text message in the text box of the meeting. I see some people already have, but for anybody that didn't know, I'll be answering questions at the end. So I should have said that sooner. I apologize, but any questions you have, just text me and then I'll answer questions at the end. We also have now on the PTT, the TRBOnet mobile client, the taskbar and quick buttons. So it's easy to switch between tabs. All the available modules are configurable via POC profile in TRBOnet. So it's just really, it's great. You can look at your recent calls, you can see your contacts, job ticketing. You have to have that added to your license with TRBOnet Enterprise. It comes with TRBOnet Plus, but you can do job ticketing on your smartphone, and you can see the maps. And I'll show this again in a second, but we can see the Bluetooth. We do the Bluetooth indoor tracking, and we also can send messages. So you can just send a quick message. So it's really user-friendly. Like, the training time on this is basically, just play with it. You'll figure it out. It's very intuitive, And we have the Bluetooth remote speaker microphones. So you can pair this with the Bluetooth microphone, and it's a little PTT button. You can clip it to your, it's almost like what the cops have. You can You can clip it up there and talk. You don't have to be talking. You don't have to be holding the device. So these devices supported now. The INA PTT and the Enrico are supported. So they're nice devices. Also have a very flexible configuration. You can select which modules and modes are available to different users or different groups. You can support for multiple configuration profiles, so everybody's not going to have the same configuration. Safety features can be enforced remotely, and users can be locked on a set channel. So if you want somebody to monitor a channel and that's all you want them to do, you can lock that channel in, and they would have to be the one that they're monitoring. So that's a new ability we can have. Some of the safety things, these are great too, because these are the same things that we can do with our GOB programming, our safety features. That such an incredible thing. I tell you, this is something that I guarantee if you talk about the GOB programming, even if you don't end up selling it, it's going to get you an appointment with the end user, because when you say, oh, we can program the radio so it'll detect if you've been in a crash. It detects the G-force, and then you program how much G-force you want it to be. There's a scale, 1 to 10 or 1 to 100. How much G-force do you want it to be before it says, okay, that was major, that was a crash. And it's gonna be different if it's a portable radio that you're wanting to know, like if a prison guard drops their radio and doesn't pick it back up. So if they drop their radio and pick it back up, no harm, no foul. But this is really big with people that they really want man down, but they disabled it because they got tired of false alarms. And everybody that's been in this business for a while knows companies that have done that. They get tired of people just laying down their radio and going to the Coke machine or whatever, and man down's triggered. So this eliminates that. We have the man down feature with the GOB programming and the radio, but with the crash detect that you can do with the radios, if they've been in a crash, if they fell or if they've been hurt or whatever. Very, very nice. So this does the same thing. It has no movement alarm. So if somebody is motionless for a certain amount of time, you can say, I want to be alerted. They might be hurt. They might have had a heart attack. They might have fallen asleep. If they have the man down ability, and the alarms that come through to the console, by the way, they say what the alarm is. It doesn't say emergency, it says man down, or it says crash detect. You can also shake the phone for an emergency alert, so you don't have to be pushing a button, like to make the emergency alarm go off. If somebody comes up on you and you're scared, you could just shake your phone, boom, it sends the alarm to the console. And of course, it works with the beacons for the indoor positioning. So some of the other features, you can read the home channels aloud for non-display devices. So the Bluetooth radios, I forget what that stands for, the RSM, but the mics, it's the remote mics. But you can have it read what channel you're on or whatever. So the small screens they have or no screens won't affect you any. You can do SIP calls now. That's a huge thing. I mean, so I can explain a lot more about that on an individual basis, but that ability is huge for a couple of reasons. The night mode is now on the TurboNet mobile client. They have the QR generator abilities and your favorites. So just really very user friendly. And then the latest and greatest, we now work on Samsung Galaxies. So our TRBOnet mobile client has worked on Android devices forever, and then we got iPhones about 7 years ago, and now we do Samsung. So, that's going to get about 95% of the world right there. But anyway, it supports the push to talk and emergency hardware buttons, and now on the Samsung. So that's cool. We have support for Tello 300K. These are the radios. What they got. This is where I was talking about. It can tell you these small windows are hard to read sometimes, but it can tell you like what channel you're on. Your group 1 or radio 321 calling. Has a new user interface for the smaller screen. So if you're not blind like me, you can actually read it. You get full duplex calls. You can do channel change. You can do group and private calls. You can request to talk. So somebody will reach you when they can, and you can do emergency alerts. I look forward to hearing from everybody, and hope everybody has a wonderful day.